morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of voice of radio. So today, we need to talk about another Radiant Pokémon. And to be fair, I told you we were almost certainly going to get 3 Radiant Pokémon in Dark Phantasm. We had previously had a bit of a look at Radiant Gardevoir, so it only seems fair that we have a little bit of a look at Radiant Hisuian Sneasler now. And yes, I'm afraid that is a little bit of a mouthful. Not much we can do about it. Now, one thing that is kind of interesting, one thing is very much worth noting here, is the fact that Radiant Hisuian Sneasler is a Darkness-type Pokemon. We've not seen a Darkness-type Radiant Pokemon yet. We will go through all the Radiant Pokemon a little bit later in the video. We'll compare them all, we'll get there. Don't worry your pretty little heads about it. My point is, they seem to be doing like they did for Amazing Rares. They seem to be going for one of every type. So if you were hoping for any other Darkness-type Radiant Pokemon, this might be the time where you have to turn around and consider that maybe, just maybe, it's not happening, dudes. You're probably not going to have it. So what do we have? I should mention that, of course, our translations come from the lovely Antoine Boulet. So what we've got here is a basic Pokemon. Remember, they're all basic, even though this is a Stage 1 Pokemon canon-wise. 130 HP is fine. It does put it nominally out of range of something like a Rapid Strike Urshifu, which could be extremely relevant right now. And it's got a weakness to fighting, which is not ideal. Retreat cost of 1, which is low. That's all fine. The attack here is not really going to impress anyone. Darkness, 2 colorless energy, 90 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. Nobody cares. We've got some good Darkness-type Pokemon coming up. And we've got Dark Patch being reprinted. And Dark Patch being reprinted is a huge deal for energy acceleration for Darkness. We've got stuff like both the Galarian Moltres, that admittedly attach energy to themselves, but we saw people like Gustavo Wada over at the EUIC using Energy Switch to move that energy from those Pokemon onto other Pokemon, just as an occasional tech. Darkness types are getting really good right now, and even with all of that borne in mind, free energy, 90 plus poison, garbage, don't play it. However, the ability here we like. Put 2 more damage counters on your opponent's poison Pokemon between turns. Cool. It makes poison better. It is, weirdly enough, exactly the same as Virbank City Gym. It is literally an ability version of Virbank City Gym. And Virbank City Gym was amazing, but also we got to bear in mind that that was paired with Hypnotoxic Laser, which was an item card that poisoned your opponent and put them to sleep on a coin flip. So if you had Virbank City Gym in play, Hypnotoxic Laser was basically an item that did 30 damage minimum. And shall we say that added up pretty gosh darn quickly. If you want a Pokemon equivalent of this, how about Toxicroak? The Toxicroak that came around in Sword and Shield. Now, interestingly enough, this Toxicroak hasn't actually rotated yet. But remember, this is not going to be an Astral Radiance. We're talking about the set after Astral Radiance. So, basically, by the time this comes out, Toxicroak will be gone. Huge difference here. This is a basic Pokemon, and Toxicroak is a Stage 1. But even with all of that borne in mind, Toxicroak really hasn't seen much play at all. There were people thinking maybe with Garbodor, because Garbodor says that if there's a stadium in play, you can just poison your opponent's active, and then combined with Toxicroak, that's nice extra damage. Garbodor will also be rotating when we hit end of August, beginning of September, depending on when it is. Garbodor's also seen basically no play. And that's the problem we see with Hisuian Sneasler here. Is poison good enough to warrant playing this in your deck? And there's a very good chance that the answer is actually no. There is an excellent chance that what we're really looking at here is a card that just isn't good enough. And it's not that we've never actually seen poison being good. Sometimes it is. But the fact of the matter is, if we look at the moment, at the format and what's winning and what's doing good, poison's just not terribly relevant. I could see this being a brilliant card to put in a cube, where you got a big pool of cards and everybody drafts a deck and plays, and as a one-off in a cube, yeah, this would be awesome. Competitive Pokemon, Maybe not. But one thing I think we all need to bear in mind, and this is extremely important, things don't stand still in Pokemon. So it's not whether it's necessarily good now. I think the format at the moment is not particularly... well, it's not particularly nice for Hisuian Sneasler, the Radiant version. However, maybe it could be in the future. And the fact of the matter is, there are some examples here where this could be good. So I showed you Electrode just the other day. Hisuian Electrode V. And I told you that that did 100 damage for each special condition affecting Hisuian Electrode for 0 energy. And I told you you're going to play it with the new Parasect, which puts both active Pokemon to sleep and are poisoned. And then there's an item card that burns, you do 300 damage. Well, if you've got a Pokemon with 310 HP, and yes, there are a bunch out there, then all of a sudden turning that poison with Parasect from 310 to 330 total, that's going to make a difference. We know that the key number for Pokemon at the moment in terms of Pokemon V is 220. And we know that there are occasional Pokemon around like Zamazenta that rock in with 230. And actually what you can do here is if you're only got 2 special conditions, let's say you've just got Parasect, you're hitting for 200, Poison puts them at 210, I'm just out of reach of Pokemon V, and now all of a sudden this goes from 210 to 230 and you get them. Because remember, that whole thing I'm talking about with Hisuian Electrode, it relies on you using that automated arm tool which lets you attack when you're asleep. You can't play Choice Belt. So actually this extra 20 damage could be good, and that's where I'm getting here. I don't think Hisuian Sneasler, the Radiant version here, is going to be an inclusion in a lot of decks. I just don't. But when you look specifically at stuff like Hisuian Electrode, that do that little bit of poison damage, then all of a sudden this could be absolutely huge. We saw, back in the past with Prism Star Pokemon, we saw stuff like Diancie Prism Star. It was a fighting type, and it just let your fighting Pokemon do an extra 20 damage. And it was great. That extra 20 damage made a huge difference, and it won a whole bunch of games, and it saw a whole bunch of play. And this is basically that, specifically for poison decks. So any deck that is going to poison is going to absolutely love this. But remember the rule with Radiant Pokémon. You can play one Radiant Pokémon of any description, and that is it in your deck. Now, they're not like Prism Star Pokemon. They don't go to the Lost Zone or anything like that. So you absolutely can recover this and keep going. Play it again and again and again. But you can only have one in your deck. So if you're playing this, you're not playing Gardevoir that lets you take 20 less damage from your opponent's Pokemon V. It means you're not playing Radiant Hawlucha that lets you do an extra 30 damage to Pokemon V Max. And remember, I told you there in the Hisuian Electrode video very clearly that generally speaking, if you get the full combo off, you're hitting 310 with Poison, and there are Pokemon like Eternatus come in with 340, and all of a sudden, Radiant Hawlucha puts you up to 340, and you hit the numbers perfectly. I think that Radiant Hisuian Sneasler is great with Hisuian Electrode. That extra 20 damage could be big, putting you from 210 to 230 or 310 to 330. But sometimes on a VMAX you need to go from 310 to 340, and Hawlucha will do it, but Hisuian Sneasler won't. And let's not forget that we've also got Radiant Greninja. Lets you discard an energy card from your hand and draw 2 cards. That is going to be the default for a lot of people here, because it is a basic Pokemon that can be a nice little draw engine sitting on the bench. And that's kind of my point here. I'm not saying Radiant Hisuian Sneasler is bad. I don't think it is. I think it's a good card. I think the fact that we've got Stage 1 Toxicroak, and then we reproduce that on a basic Pokemon, I think is brilliant. Incidentally, Toxicroak was 70 damage poison on a coin flip for free energy. This is 90 damage automatic poison for free energy, which makes a huge difference. Although I still don't think the attack is good, let's be perfectly clear. My problem is that outside of poison decks, this isn't going to see play. And even inside poison decks, there are reasons why you might want to play Hawlucha to get key KOs on Pokemon V Max. Or Greninja for a little bit of extra draw. Or Gardevoir to reduce the damage done to you by 20 and stop some key KOs. even in that narrow range of decks, poison decks, where this ends up working, there are still going to be reasons not to play it, although to be clear, it's not really reasons not to play it, it's just reasons to play something else over it. Either way, I'm giving it between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. Not a bad card, not by a long shot. But can it really stand up to the other Radiant Pokemon we've seen so far? I honestly think that most of the time the answer's no. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.